TV1, TV for life.
Good evening and welcome to Face for the Newsfirst team. I'm Niresh Eliathambi. In just 1 week's time, President Anurakumara Dissanayake will be celebrating 1 year in office. And it's been quite a year indeed. And to discuss the year that is behind us and the year that is ahead, I have with me Mr. Kesarralal Gunasekara, no stranger to our viewers, who is of course a former member of Parliament. Good evening, Kesarralal. Welcome back.
Good evening, Niresh.
Right, Kesarralal, looking back at 1 year, we see that things are improving. The latest data which came out yesterday on economic growth or the state of the economy, in the second quarter, Sri Lanka has registered 4.9% positive growth, which is excellent given that just a few years ago, where were we? We were recording negative growth and up to about a year ago we were still in deep trouble. Right, so what's your opinion, Kesarralal? What are we seeing here, this 4.9 growth? Is it something to be celebrated? Is it something one-off? Are we counting our chickens too quickly? What's the situation?
I think, of course, these are not things to be celebrated. But on the one hand, we must be happy that we have achieved close upon 5% growth on the second quarter. That clearly gives an indication to the country that the government has been moving forward. Whatever anybody says, that the government has moved forward, and very steadily they have done so. And in so many spheres of activity, they have ensured that there is growth, which is a very good sign, and I think they should improve on that as well.
So, do you expect this growth to continue? Despite, of course, we see there is a lot of global uncertainty with President Donald Trump's tariffs across the world, and the projections are that there will be a global economic slowdown because of this?
There is always a possibility of a slowdown, not as a result of any weakness in our system. I feel the policies enunciated by the US government brings in a lot of changes to various countries, affects various countries. Sri Lanka is certainly going to get affected, but I hope that the government will take proper action, timely action, to ensure that they are not that affected with regard to these changes. But certainly those changes can take place.
Now, Kesarralal, looking back at the last year, what would you say were the milestones of President AKD's government, his 1 year in office?
New culture of administration, the most important thing. I think he has brought in a new culture of administration, and he wants to improve on that. The new culture has done so many good things, I feel, for the country. Corruption was rampant in this country. Bribery and corruption was rampant, which is on the negative now. They are moving against all those wrongdoers. So in that respect, I feel the change in the culture can do so many things. Although we think it doesn't, but the change in culture can do so many things. So I feel that the President and his government and his team will prevail upon those things as well and walk into the future. Nothing to be so happy about, but still I feel it's a good achievement. Under the circumstances, what they have done is remarkable, I would say.
So, apart from the anti-corruption drive, which of course is highly touted, and there's no doubting its effectiveness, What else can you point to? We already spoke about the economic growth. Are there any other positive points that you can speak of?
Nilesh, the question here is that the government has to ensure that they establish an environment for economic activity. The role of the government is that the economic activity is being carried out by the private sector. But the creation of the environment is what is essential. And in that respect, they must have constant dialogue and discussions with the business sector on various ways of improving and creating an environment which will promote growth. Those are things that are very necessary, and I feel that all ministries are geared and moving in that direction. So that's a good sign. But the private sector also needs to understand that they have to work with the government. They have to keep on knocking on the door. They have to keep on coming out with problems and getting the attention of the government for those problems. That is very essential. That's the way forward for anybody. Of course, the role of the opposition is also should be on those lines, but unfortunately, I don't see that happening in the present day context, which is very sad.
Now, Kesarralal, it takes two to tango.
Yeah.
And yes, the government is trying to set up the environment for economic growth. But do you feel that the private sector has responded adequately? Should there be more impetus on getting in foreign investment, and also local businesses should be more bullish on expansion?
There should be. Only thing is as to whether the local businessmen have the capacity as of now, but things will improve. The statements made by the international agencies are in favor of Sri Lanka, and therefore there is hope that much more investment should come in the ensuing coming year. And those things will always help the country, but the private sector itself has to understand that they need to drive it forward. That's the key. They need to take it forward, and I think they are doing their level best, which is a good sign. And they must be supported at all levels. I hear so many issues about customs, etc. Those are matters that have to be resolved in amicable manner. I mean, even with regard to the importation of vehicles, there are so many stories which are floating around which are not so good, I feel. I mean, if businessmen can go through laws, etc., and circumvent the status quo, I feel that's not good, and therefore the customs have to be much more vigilant on those lines. I mean, you can buy a vehicle overseas, register it and keep it for a couple of days, and then get it down as a second-hand vehicle. You pay less duty. The customs should have to understand that these are matters that they have to look into.
But these are fairly simple matters.
These simple matters which have to, and the government has to ensure that they get the customs to move forward. You cannot permit things of that nature. You cannot permit some things of that nature to happen in this country. It is very bad. These are things that have happened in the past. It cannot happen anymore.
But Kesarralal, we always knew that some of the key departments that needed to have their systems changed were and are customs, excise, inland revenue, police, and so on. Now, the Bribery Commission has actually changed around. It's very active. You hear news of arrests every day. So if they could change things around so quickly, why is it that these other departments, which are also involved in enforcing the law, they seem to be going slower?
Well, the question is this: I still feel that it will take time, because they were on the wrong track in the past, and changing is not an easy exercise in the present day context. So I feel it will take time. But if you take the customs and the excise, the revenue that they have generated is enormous, and you must give credit to them for that, for those as well. But there are still so many areas that needs improvement, and those improvements have to come. Government has to understand those 4 agencies that you mentioned: the customs, the inland revenue, the excise department, etc., the police. I think restructuring those agencies is very important now. I have told this on many occasions that if I was the president of this country, Inland Revenue Department, I would ask all those people who are employed to go home. We'll pay you salaries till 55 or 60. 25% of that workforce is more than enough to run a proper Inland Revenue function in this country. You don't need any of those things. What is this? The environment is ideal for this, because if you bring in technology, so many things can be covered up within a matter of 1 or 2 minutes. So many data can be picked up in a matter of 1 or 2 minutes. That's a situation in this world. Technology advancement is so massive. In that context, if these agencies cannot bring in technology and improve their services, I feel that the government has to step in and say, look here, restructuring is essential and it has to be done.
But Kesarralal, whenever the government, this government, the previous governments, whenever they tried to do any restructuring, they run into this mafia of unions which go on strike and or threaten to go on strike and bring everything to a standstill. We've seen it with the CEB, the CPC, the private bus operators, the postal workers. So what does that tell you about the level of commitment of these workers?
If you take the unions, I'm not going against any union as such. If you take the unions, of course they did a wonderful job. If you take the 70s, 80s, etc. But today, I don't think their role is required even now, because as long as you are doing a job, you get your pay, you get your salary, everything. Surely they should change. I think the attitudes have to change. The mindset has to change. You cannot be fighting union wars, etc. in the present day context. Those things have to die off. Otherwise, you can't take this country forward. The world over, you don't see any of these things happening. So the union leaders also have to understand that they need to adjust and amend. If they don't, it's bad for the country. So that's the message that I would say that the union leaders have to take. And at the same time, the government also has to have continuous dialogue with unions to ensure that they don't have problems. And of course, in certain areas, I see the ministers having discussions on a weekly basis with regard to certain issues that are cropping up. That is good. Those are good signs. We have to move forward. But as I said, union activity in the past is okay, but union activity as of now is not required, I feel.
Now
I only hope people not take up cudgel against me when I say these things, but when I look at the whole picture, I feel these are things. And at the same time, the rights of workers must be protected by the administration. That's very important. If you protect the rights of the workers, you won't have much problems. That's very essential.
Now, you mentioned the rights of workers. The government sector is widely acknowledged as being far too bloated. We have something like 1.4 million government servants when you count all the SOEs and so on, and that's far too many. But this government has committed itself and is not going to trim the fat and send people home. Of course, because that would also create an unemployment problem and social issues. But how do you handle this?
Well, I think so far what they have said is...
Because it's a drain on the public finance.
Yeah. The question is this, I still feel, Nilesh, it's not 1.4 million, I still feel it is around 1.7 million.
I stand corrected, you would know. Yes.
It's about 1.7
But that's even
million.
worse then.
Yeah, it's worse. Therefore, the government, of course, the government has said with regard to certain SOEs that they'll have to gradually close up and wind up.
There are
which is a good sign.
33 state-owned
Yeah.
enterprises.
So
which
those are
they
good
have
decisions.
announced. Yes.
Those are good decisions. But at the same time, ensure that some of those people who were employed don't lose employment. That's another problem. So you need to mix up your activities to ensure that people don't get upset about things that are happening. But at the same time, changes are essential. That is very essential. You have to bring down the number of government servants in this country. That is very essential because you don't need all those people. You don't need all those people. So bring it down. That's very essential.
Now you mentioned technology, and when we think technology, we have this thought that sometimes that it's computers doing things online, but there is much more to technology. There's automation of tasks which are at present conducted
Humanly.
manually.
Manually, yes.
And that's why when you look at more advanced countries, especially in Asia, if you're talking Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan and so on, you see that there are far fewer state employees because everything is automated. The public can simply do whatever they need, get the services they require, whether it's online applications or going there, and actually there are kiosks and other elements. So why is it that we have for so many years not got into this? I feel intentionally stayed away from advancing our nation.
Yeah, you on the one aspect you're right, but at the same time, Niresh, it's not that easy to introduce automation also because the people in this country, if you take the average man, he's not savvy or versant with those online applications, etc. That is another issue. See, it's about 20 to 25% of the people who are involved in those things. So the balance, who deals with them? That's the issue. But you have to gradually bring them into the picture. The phone is one. The phone is one unit available for the introduction of online operations, etc.
But Kesarralal, everyone's got a smartphone nowadays.
Yeah.
You walk down the street and everybody's on a smartphone. And they know how to use it.
Yeah.
You don't have to teach them.
Correct.
So, at the same time, Sri Lankans are not less smarter than Malaysians or Thais. Exactly.
Very much smarter.
So one would think that we should be able to do this quickly.
The question is this: we need to push them into that. If you don't push anybody, nobody's going to do anything. So the pushing part has to take place. I think that has to start from the local authority level. That pushing has to start from the local authority level and move up. That's the only way. That's a key, I feel.
But Kesarralal, now if you take a simple app like an online banking app, and all the banks have online banking apps now, it's on your phone.
Yeah.
But if you go to a bank branch anywhere in this country, you see not just people, you see a long queue of people.
Yeah.
And you don't see in most bank branches, they haven't reduced the number of staff either.
Correct.
There are a few, especially
yes.
some of the international banks, they have fully automated and they don't serve you at the counter. If you want service at the counter, they will charge you 100 rupees or something. So people don't go to the counter, they go to the ATM. But in most of our local banks, whether it's state sector or private sector, you see these long queues of people.
Correct. The question is, that culture has still not established in our society. We still prefer to go to the bank and get things done over the counter, etc. There are two reasons. Number one,
which is more expensive, actually.
Which is more expensive. You are wasting your time, etc. But there is another aspect. There's another aspect. You know, so many scams are taking place in this country, and people are frightened to operate systems through the phone, etc. Now that's also a severe drawback, I feel. But we must ensure that people are taught to move forward using the phone and do all their transactions, because you don't if people are continuously coming to banks, that is a clear indication we have failed. We have failed.
Now, speaking further on technology, Kesarralal, the government has, of course, focused on digitalization, automation. So hopefully within the next couple of years, we can expect the state sector services to be highly automated. But what about the private sector? We see in some companies, yes, they are highly automated already. But in other companies, they are lagging behind.
Sir, that's correct. Because they have not made investments on those. That's our problem. Investments in those. With regard to the earlier matter, Niresh, I must tell you, you know, we in this country, we have the elderly people who prefer to go to the bank. You know why? The contact with the people, the discussion with the staff, etc., which they enjoy. Some of the elderly people, they prefer to go to the bank maybe twice a week to speak to people, to encash, have a chat with the teller. Those things are also required in life. So you must understand it's a two-way process as well when you walk into a bank and conduct affairs. It's contact as well.
Human contact.
Contact.
Certainly with retired persons that would be acceptable. But I'm talking not of retired persons, but of young people, middle-aged people. They are wasting their time and resources going to, it's not just banks, it's all kinds of other institutions which they can very well sit at home or at their office and get things done.
Yeah, but things are really certainly moving. Now if you take me, most of my transactions I do online, but there are certain transactions I send to the bank as well, manually to be done. So those things are also there, but then at the same time I feel it will take time, and government also needs to understand that they must ensure they gradually take out this business of moving money up and down. That has to be done through accounts, you know. Movement of money up and down is not a healthy sign at all for an economy. Transactions must be executed online, etc. Whether you buy or sell or whatever it is, all those transactions must go online. That's the only way. But in today's context, everybody is the currency. Now, if you go to a country like China, everything is conducted on those lines. No, you hardly see currency. But in this country, I think the government has to step in and bring in laws to ensure that will rake in a lot of money as well, because everybody has to go through the process, and you automatically get caught into the income tax net. That's very essential. These changes will bring in good results for the government as well. So far, the government has ensured that their incomes are increased and the expenditure has been curtailed. That's what the government is doing. On the one hand, they are getting their incomes raised or increased, but at the same time, the expenditure also is being reduced, which is a very good sign. And that's how the government should move forward. Every government, they have made a big mistake. What's a very simple mistake? You earn 100 rupees and you spend about 150 rupees. You earn 100 and spend 150. That is exactly what happened to this country. Over the last so many years, what has happened? Successive governments have been doing this. You borrow money to pay interest. You borrow money on loans taken, you borrow money again to pay interest. Then you borrow money to pay installments also. Where are you going to end up? That's why, massive loans. What for? Most of those loans are taken either to pay interest or to pay in loan installments. We can't move forward on those lines. The country cannot progress on those lines. So the present government is ensuring that they don't go on those lines. That is why everybody is so happy with them. And I think they are trying to, this culture that they are trying to introduce, everybody has to support them. Everybody needs to support them.
No, Kesarralal, when you look back at certain regimes in Sri Lanka, they touted high rates of growth, but though that growth was based on government spending.
Yeah.
Now this government isn't basing growth on government spending because number one, the government doesn't have money. Number two, we have certain
regulations
set by the IMF, which is basically for our own good.
For our own good.
And we need to follow those. Otherwise, the IMF, I think, was making sure that no matter who got elected, the country would not make the same mistakes as before. So that's one good thing. But at the same time, this driver of growth, which is the state sector investments, that being virtually absent is a drawback, isn't it?
Yeah, the question is this, I think the government was very, very cautious in those, but now they have started investment sector because they feel that they are on a sound footing and they move forward. But you have to understand what the ability of the government to spend, the private sector sometimes cannot invest. The huge amount of money that the government can spend. Therefore, the government also has to understand, if the private sector, you have to watch the whole scenario. If the private sector is not expanding, the government has to step in. If the private sector is expanding, then you don't have to worry so much about it. That's a way. That's a way to go forward. Government always has to understand that they must have a tab on how the private sector is spending. If the private sector is cutting out, then the government sector has to step in and boost it up. That's very essential because you must understand, spending has to be there. Spending also has to be there. Otherwise you can't have growth. You cannot have growth unless you are spending.
Absolutely. Now this week we see, I think it was yesterday, the central bus stand in Peta is being renovated. It's going to be
refurbished. Yeah.
Refurbished. It's going to be a more modern center. So that's good, and of course that is it will be very convenient for the public, the traveling public, and also it is an investment, isn't it?
Exactly.
So there's money flowing from the government to the people. So that's one good thing, and I think the
and I feel, Niresh, successive governments have failed to get the working people to travel by rail or bus. I mean, all other countries, several developed countries, people travel by train or bus to work. So they have their sometimes have you
been on a train or bus recently? And
I do travel.
Were you not praying most of the time when you are in a bus?
Yeah, but the question is this: we all need to understand that if we keep on shutting down public sector transport, that is not going to improve.
Right.
We have to start using that.
But it's not just public sector transport; it's the private bus drivers.
Yeah, but that's still for all. I still feel that we have to start traveling by bus. That's very essential because the amount of diesel and petrol that is wasted on the highways. I mean, 8 o'clock to 9:30, 12:30 to 2 o'clock, again 3:30 to 6 o'clock. Traffic means a lot of money is wasted. The government has to get experts to study a way out. Tell them, okay, on these days you can't travel by cars. As a start, 1 day a week, stop all private sector vehicles coming in.
But Kesarralal, before you do that, you need
improvement.
To have not just improvement of the transport sector, complete revamping.
Yeah,
we don't have buses. We have lorry chassis with a bus cabin on top, which are highly dangerous. Those buses aren't even designed for for mass transport
No,
of
if
passengers.
people start using, the investments will come, I feel. The question is, everybody wants to use a private, even a motorcycle to buy and go. What for? I mean, in Colombo, traveling is a nightmare. Is a nightmare. Morning, noon, and evening.
But then it's the inefficiency of that public transport system, isn't it?
I think
look at our trains. The trains look like they're about 40 or 50 years old to start with. They're
Correct.
still diesel,
Yeah.
whereas most countries have now moved to electric.
I know, but if we start in the correct direction by start using buses, it's 25% start using buses, it will improve. Then another 25% in 2 years' time. That's the way. That's the way forward. We have to start using public transport.
No, again, Kesarralal, this is an area that the government tried to take some steps, but was thwarted by the unions. The railway unions threatened to go on strike. The private bus drivers threatened to go on strike, and the government was unable to lay down the law. This is a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, the question is this, I still feel that the attitudes of people,
When you say the
mindset has to
attitudes of
change.
people, is it the public, or is it the state workers or the private
Public,
workers?
state workers, everybody. I prefer to go by bus. I prefer to go by bus. Because it's convenient. It's convenient. So, short travel, short distance traveling, I think more people can travel in buses. And you don't have to have all those seats. No, somebody traveling from, we say average person, 40 years old, can't he travel 4-5 miles standing? You can. You don't need all those seats. Huh? On either sides you have seats and the balance can be standing. You can take more people by buses. These are things that we have to look into. These are things that have to be introduced into this country. Huh? That's very essential. Moving forward is that, changing everything, changing the mindset, everything involves has to be done.
Now we also see the Central Expressway is going to be restarted because basically it was being constructed and then we ran out of money and that was that. So for years it's been lying dormant, but I think it's now being restarted. Of course it will take a couple of years to build, but then you have to start somewhere.
Exactly. But my advice to the government always is concentrate on the rail. Rail is the improvement that is required. If you improve the rail, you are okay. So rail, not the bus, not the highways. Huh? People might blame me for saying this, but highways is not the answer for this country. It's a rail, right around the country, sent everywhere. The rail, you have to understand, because so everybody can use the rail. Then highways, who can? It's a very limited number of people, which is wrong. But that mindset has to change. We need to move to bigger things. Rail, improvement of rail. No government has done that so far. I hope this government will concentrate on the rail. That is very essential. Of course, you'll have to get assistance from other countries as well. Appeal to them. Get things done. If you build up the rail, you're through. People can travel.
But it's not rocket science either.
It's not rocket science.
I mean, most countries have already done it.
Tsunami time, we could have done that, we failed. These are things that we missed, opportunities missed. Tsunami time was an ideal opportunity for us to improve our rail system. We did not do that. Because so many countries were focusing on Sri Lanka. But we couldn't. We managed. We managed to dismantle everything. So the rail is the key, and I still feel everybody has to concentrate on the rail, not the highways. Highways is okay. That's okay. But the rail is much more important.
So that's something for the government to focus on in the second year. What other challenges do you see in the second year of President AKD's administration?
I think next issue is education. This is my feeling, Niresh. We have gone through this process. My feeling is as to whether an alternative for this 5-year scholarship examination has to come in. all minds have to be put together and worked out a program, because 5-year scholarship is a killer. It's a killer. And we need to understand that in a class, you take a class, you have good students, bright students, and you may not have so many bright students as well. But if those students are available in the class, the class improves. That is how we came up. That's how we improved ourselves. We were not experts. What rubbish. But in our class, there were experts. There were intelligent people. So we also rose up naturally. That is what's essential. It's not the scholarship examination that is required. But only thing is, how do you sell this to the people? How do you sell this to the parents of this country? You can't. It's very difficult, because their mindset is 5th-year scholarship program. Those things have to change. The education system needs change, but it has to be done very, very carefully, because you make a mistake in the education system, one mistake, it will take 30-40 years for rectification.
But again, Kesarralal, this is not rocket science. Although we pretend that changes to the education system are so difficult, but other countries do it.
Yeah.
You know, and we were just discussing that the people in other countries are not necessarily smarter than Sri Lankans, but when Sri Lankans go through 10 or 12 years of school, they are unemployable. Everyone says it. That is accepted. So it's a matter of changing the education system, and other countries do it. I mean,
correct.
Why is it that Singaporeans are so much more employable, or even Malaysians? Why are they so much more employable when they finish schooling?
Correct. I mean, if you study these systems in other countries, take the case of Sweden, they teach so many things. Carpentry. I mean, we had carpentry schools which are carpentry workshops. We are done away with them. This is why I say education needs a big change overall. Bring carpentry. Those things must be taught at school. Electricity.
Driving.
Driving. Those things must be taught at school. Ensure that while the education is moving, those sectors also are covered. Why do schools in Sweden have carpentry workshops, lathe workshops? Why? Has anybody gone and checked those things? And those students do very well. So those things have to come in. And this government should be able to do all those things.
Now,
they should be able to do all those things.
Now, what about the international arena, the foreign relations? Now, this is an area where the government was supposed to fall down. There were so many predictions that President AKD and his ministers would not be able to
communicate,
to hold forth in the international arena. And certainly there have been some gaps.
Yes, there have been some gaps.
But
by and large,
are you happy with our international situation?
We need to understand that English is an international language. But over the years, what successive governments had done had brought us into this level. You can't blame these people. So gradually we move forward. But just because you don't understand or don't talk English does not mean that you are inferior. What rubbish. I mean, whatever said and done, these ministers of the present government, they have gone and conquered international the arena as well. Whether they have made mistakes or not is irrelevant. When the Japanese talks, they also make mistakes in English. We need not worry about those things. But we have to move forward. Don't worry about English. Learn English, that's okay. But don't worry too much about English. You must learn English. Every student must be given the opportunity to learn English. That's a big mistake that this country made in 1960s. Big mistake. And we are still suffering. We are still suffering.
Now, we've been talking about the government. What about the opposition? What is the situation of the opposition? Because a strong democracy needs a strong opposition.
That's true. That's why I said, I always say that the opposition needs to understand that they must take the government forward also. They must assist at certain times. They can oppose certain ventures, certain issues. But at the same time, they must be seen as supporting the government on certain ventures, which is what is expected of the opposition. But I don't see that at times. I mean, it's I feel it's angry people in Parliament. Most of the members of Parliament are in an angry mood. As to why that is, I don't know. It's very strange, but I mean, what the government is doing is they are doing a very proactive operation. What people who have done something wrong, corruption, all those issues, bribery, they are being brought to justice. Can anybody say that that is wrong? Can anybody say that it is wrong? You can't. You have to understand that even if you are in power, you are expected to do all that. So don't go against them. Move away from those things. And then tie up with the government and move forward. Who knows? You can always tell, look here, we tried our level best, but they have failed. That can be said. But the way you are going, the way you are operating, you are not giving an indication to the average man that you are supporting the government, which should be the case.
Excellent thoughts indeed. Well, I'm afraid we are out of time. My thanks to Kesarralal Gunasekara, former Member of Parliament. Thank you, Kesarralal, for being with me this evening.
It's a pleasure.
And thank you to you at home for watching. Don't go away because the news is coming up next. Have a great evening.